Hey guys, welcome to the Nate Whitson Show. So glad to have you. Thanks for joining today. This is a place where we want to help Christian men get unstuck and figure out how to change for good when change can be so hard. I know that from personal experience, birthed out of just a brokenness with pornography and passivity. And so we really take on those two big things in a Christian man's life, and they're so interconnected. It's not all we talk about, but change is hard. And yet the purpose for this life is so big in Christ. We want to be better husbands, better fathers, better followers of Jesus. And so if you're into those things and you just want to get better today, you want to be the man that God made you to be, you want to get in the fight, get in the mission, today's conversation is right in line with that, and you're going to love it. I'm joined today, if you're following on our YouTube channel at Get in the Fight, you'll get to see Matt here. If you're listening and wherever that's at, then you'll just get to hear this conversation. But I'm joined by Matt Schmidt of a ministry called Intimate Covenant. Matt and his wife Jenn have a mission to help Christian married couples have a fuller relationship and an extraordinary sex life. Who doesn't want both of those? They are the host. I'll read a little bio for you here. They're the host of the Intimate Covenant podcast. They've been married for over 25 years, have 4 young adult children, and recently began spoiling their first grandchild, which is awesome. Matt and Jenn live in, I think, in Tomball, just like it looks, Tomball, Texas.
Yeah. Who would guess?
Who would guess? English is hard for me here in Michigan. They worship with their beloved church family at Decker Prairie Church. By profession, Matt's a veterinary specialist, but his passion is helping mentor married couples and providing biblical instructions for those who want to achieve a deeper relationship with a holy view of sexuality. Since 2017, Intimate Covenant offers group Bible studies, premarital counseling, private couples coaching, weekend seminars, and an annual marriage retreat and podcast. I don't know how do you do all that you do. We'll get into that. In their treasured quiet time, Matt and Jenn enjoy date nights, drinking coffee, reading, gardening, hiking, vacation planning, and they are avid natural park enthusiasts and love exploring God's beautiful world together. Matt, super cool, man. You're living a great life. Thanks for joining on the show today.
You know, when you, as you're reading that, I was just thinking the same thing. I do have a pretty great life, and I'm so blessed, just so blessed. I don't know why me, but so blessed. Yeah. Thank you, Nate. It's incredibly an honor to be with you, to meet you, and to join you, and to join and get in the fight. I love it. I love your mission, and I love being here with you.
Thank you, man. That's so cool. We were saying this off air before we jumped on, but like it is so cool to meet the body of Christ. I think of heaven and like the endless amount of just sitting around a bonfire, whatever it's going to look like. And just like going like, wow, we're here. Look at, and just full of people like you. I mean, I just cannot wait for eternity and what that's going to look like in perfect, complete restoration.
Truly. I think you said it well, but one of the best things, maybe the best thing about what Jenn and I have had the blessing and opportunity to do, especially when we get to travel to places to meet other married couples and just get a glimpse of how amazing heaven is going to be with so many incredible people. Just, what a blessing to look forward to.
No doubt. Yeah. And, you guys being national park enthusiasts, my wife and I haven't done this yet, but we're like, Lord willing, maybe someday. We've got four kids as well. And so we haven't got to that point yet, but how amazing when a world that's perfected in heaven, like if it's this beautiful now, what are we in for?
Yeah. You can't go to some of these places and not be reminded of that or not be struck by that. God is so creative and has done so many beautiful things for us. And just to know that what we see now is imperfect. Yeah, you're right. It's what a privilege, what a blessing to look forward to.
Yes, sir. Well, let's jump right in. I'm so excited to chat with you today. I really appreciate your time here. There's a quote that's right front and center on your website that I want to read and then have you jump into and maybe comment on.
Sure.
It said this: "Our story is not a fairy tale romance. We were broken, but now we know redemption. Our relationship was disconnected, but now we know healing. Our marriage was okay, but now we have extraordinary intimacy and oneness." I mean, like that's a powerful quote that I think a lot of people are they're gonna hear that or go to your website and read that and go, you know what, neither is mine. Like I'm not living in a fairy tale romance either. So let's just kind of start there, because there's nothing like people watch or they'll come to your website, or they meet you, I'm sure, at marriage retreats and go, wow, you guys just have it perfect. You must have something I don't. And the reality
sure.
is probably not the case, right? So tell us your story.
Yeah, of course. I mean, even if you look at my, social media profile, or I should say my wife's social media profile, it looks idyllic. And you would never find anything negative on that social media feed. If you see us at church on Sunday, everything looks great. And just like everyone else in every other pew, everything looks great. But that is obviously not always the case. And our story certainly comes from a great deal of brokenness. It's no secret, if you have followed us, if you're familiar with our story, that our marriage started in a pretty bad spot. My wife had been sexually abused for most of her childhood. I had my own sexual struggles with pornography and other just bad choices. And we came into marriage with a lot of baggage. And so we struggled. And not only with a lot of baggage, but not a lot of help, not a lot of mentorship that we needed. And some of that was our own fault for not finding it. We hid our problems from each other and from the rest of the world. And so we struggled. We were fighting against enemies that we didn't even know existed. We did not even acknowledge. And so we fought with each other. We had some distance. Now, we still had a good marriage. We were raising kids. Our kids were, quote, good kids. Our marriage was good. And for some, that would have been good enough. But for whatever reason, God put a spirit in us to seek excellence. And that's what we ultimately wanted. And that required, you say, get in the fight. I mean, that required some fights to look at each other, to hold each other accountable, to be held accountable, to be vulnerable with each other. That required quite a journey, but it was worth it. And that's, I think, the greatest message that we are trying to get out to people is that it is worth it. It is worth it to struggle and to engage that journey, engage that sometimes engage that conflict, embrace that conflict, so that you can grow to be a better person, you can grow to be a better spouse, you can grow to be a better servant of God, because the reward it's just so much more worth it. It is so much more rewarding relationally. And, we talk about it, that's kind of where the intimate covenant focus has kind of shifted, is towards the sexual side of the marriage. That's what we talk about maybe most, but really we use that lens of sexuality and sexual relationship to get to the heart of the whole relationship and growing closer to one another. So again, I mean, that's worth it. It's been a journey, but without doubt, unquestionably, it is worth it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And man, you did a great job at just obviously giving the big picture. And I'm sure there's so many hard moments, hard battles, so many heavy things that both of you brought into it, that could spend, I'm sure your whole ministry is full of sharing story after story, but I think it's really important for my audience, maybe who isn't familiar with you. Like, again, they need to know, we need to know that there's hope more than anything else in the world, that there is hope that you can change, because so many people, when they feel stuck in a marriage that was broken and just okay, like you described, if you get to the point where you feel like there is no hope, you become a statistic of, well, there we go again, right? And so I love that we'll start this off that way, that there is hope, that you can change. And that's really my whole mantra, right? Like, for men that feel stuck and want to change, but go, this is so hard, I don't know where to go. If you don't have hope, you're in trouble. And I think your story is such a great starting point there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my wife often uses the analogy that we just want to be somebody's taillights.
Yeah.
So we just want to be able to show another, if we can show one couple that there is a road to something that is better. That's all we're trying to be. But yes, there is hope, and that's where it has to start. If you have no hope, it means you have nothing that you can look forward to. And the Bible just does not teach that you have to settle for mediocrity. I think, I would assume most of your listeners are believers, and I would assume by that they believe that Jesus rose from the dead.
I hope so.
That he went from death to life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really actually believe that, what makes you think that he can't do the same for your marriage?
Great.
But sometimes I think as Christians, we go through the motions. Yeah, we show up and we go to church and we do what we think we're supposed to be doing. We live by the quote rules, but we never actually believe that there is resurrection outside of, the four walls of the church building. And that hope, that life ought to permeate our lives. That hope for resurrection ought to permeate every part of our life, so that we can take things that are dead and make them alive. That is the power of God. That is the power of Christ. That's the power of resurrection. And I believe that. I hope you believe that. I hope your listeners believe that.
Sure.
And that hope for life is, to your point and your mission, it is worth the fight.
So well said. And man, I hope you're right. I hope everybody listening to this believes that, because that is the hope of the world. That is like, you hear this idea that the gospel changes everything. It does.
Yes. Because the gospel is about death to life.
Yes.
That is the ultimate hope.
Yes. It's really interesting, because I deal a lot with the pornography side of it with Christian men and the struggle there to change, and feel so stuck in that battle. And for guys that I counsel or work with, they're just like, I just can't get past it. I think a big piece of that is exactly what you're saying. They discount the resurrection power that is Christ in them. It's like they know it by their head, but they really in their heart say, I don't think he can overcome this one.
I agree with you. I agree. Having been there myself, I mean, that's part of my story as well. Being stuck in that bondage of pornography and whatever other vices that you may be dealing with, addictions or other problems, that journey towards changing yourself has to start with hope in Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir.
It has to. Without that, you really have no foundation, no strong foundation by which you can stand on and hope to be able to change. Yes, there are secular means by which people get out of that kind of bondage, but you will not be renewed to the same kind of life and power if you don't make that change with Jesus at the focus, with Jesus as your center, with Jesus in your heart.
I think we could pray and just end the show now. I think it's all we really want people to know. We're not going to. I hope we have more time, but I think that's all we need to say, to be honest with you. We're constantly telling people in this ministry, you just need to get close to Jesus. That is the answer. And it sounds like, okay, well, I've heard that and I've been in church my whole life. The reality is that's the answer. It's apart from me, you can do nothing. And so when I'm talking about stuck in any addiction or battle or an okay marriage, the answer is you've got to get close to Jesus. And I'm telling my audience what I'm really just saying to me. They get to be a platform for me to talk to me. I need to be close to Jesus. And if I do that, it'll change my life. Like we do Devos. We have an online community, a free community that we call Fight Club. And so there's an app that I send to people. It's free. Any guy can join. But we do devotions every day. We read through the Bible in a year together. And what we always do is I hold up my Bible first thing and I say, hey, before we start, this is my Bible. This is God's word. If I read it and do what it says, it'll change my life. And we rehearse it over and over and over because I think it's true. I think the result of Jesus.
And that's got to be your focus. And that's not to say that the answer to your problems is just to pray more or just to read your Bible more.
Say the magic words.
Right, exactly. That's not the point. Exactly. That's all part of it, yes. But that motivation has to come from the fact that I love Jesus. I want to be like Jesus. And I believe that that being like him is the solution to everything. That being like him is everything. It's what I was created for. It's what I was meant to be. And that serving him will ultimately give me a greater reward than serving myself.
Well said. Yeah, today actually we're reading 1 John. And 1 John is constantly saying, this is what it looks like to love God, to obey him, and it's also not a burden.
Yep.
It's actually the greatest joy of my life,
Yeah,
right?
it's about abiding in him. That's what it's about. That's where the greatest fulfillment is. It's being in him, being surrounded by him. Yeah, exactly.
Love it. Well, there's another quote. I want to share this quote, and we'll jump into this. There's a stat that you give online that says that only 58% of married couples say that their marriage is going very well, and 64% are unsatisfied with their sex life. So let's separate these two ideas.
Yeah.
In the first part of that, like, why are so many married couples coming to you saying that their marriages aren't going very well? Are there any common themes that you think men need to hear today?
I think there are some common themes. A lot of it is that men and women, and I mean, you could look at this from any relationship, even if you work in any large corporation, how many of those folks are just truly overjoyed to be working there or overjoyed with the people that they work with? So you put any two people together or any group of people together, there's going to be some conflict and dissatisfaction, but that obviously is amplified substantially when you put two people together in a covenantly bound relationship where they must deal with each other every day. Mm. There are lots of reasons, I think, why married couples are dissatisfied with their relationship. I think if we were to boil it all down to the very basic bare bones of where that conflict happens, it's because of unmet expectations. Mm. All of us, I think unequivocally, all of us went into marriage with very different expectations from our spouse. Mm-hmm. And not just in the sexual realm, but in every sense. Mm-hmm. Some of us got married thinking, well, now I finally have this person all to myself. Or some of us went into marriage thinking, well, the dating's finally over. I no longer have to keep pursuing my spouse in this same way. Finally, I hooked them. And so now my job is over and I can move on to the next big thing in my life, like my career or whatever it might be. So all of us come into marriage with different expectations. And because of that, we are very quickly and very often disappointed by our spouse not meeting those expectations, which most of the time our spouse didn't even know that I had those expectations. Corey Allen says that we make covert contracts with our spouses very frequently. A funny story about that. When my wife and I got married, one of the things that she put on our marriage registry was something made by the Tupperware company called a pickle keeper. It's a plastic tub with a little device or tray in the bottom that when you open the lid, it lifts pickle spears out of the pickle juice so that you can obtain a pickle spear without getting your fingers wet. Clever device. My wife registered for one. And for the first several weeks of our marriage, when she made dinner for us, we sat down to the table and every time there were pickles on the table. I wasn't eating the pickles. My wife wasn't eating the pickles, but we had pickles on the table, whether we were having, spaghetti or chicken nuggets or whatever it might be. Finally, I asked my wife, why are there pickles when we're having spaghetti tonight? That doesn't feel like it goes together. She's like, well, because when I was growing up, my dad ate pickles with every meal. And so I thought as a wife, I should have pickles on the table for every meal.
Amazing.
Well, again, I didn't ask for it. She just thought that's what we needed. And so our relationship started out with all of these assumptions that we had made about each other. We never took the time to really ask. But to your point, I think the place where now we didn't have a fight about the pickles, but we had fights about a lot of other things because we had a lot of expectations for each other that we didn't really ever disclose to each other. So I think that's where a lot of this disappointment comes from. And the other side of it is a lot of those expectations that we have because we feel like that if our spouse would only do X, Y, Z, that my life would be better.
Yep.
And I think we miss the opportunity in those cases to find out what does my spouse actually need. We don't ever seek out the opportunity to find out what does my spouse actually need. And we don't actually believe that if I could learn to serve my spouse better, ultimately that's what would be best for me. Just like our relationship with Christ, not coincidentally. Yeah. When I start serving Christ, that's when my life actually gets better. Not when I start finding and getting all the things that I want for myself.
Man, it's such a subtle thing. Like even here you say it, you're so 100% spot on. And it feels very subtle. Like we're thinking, like we don't even realize how self-centered we are in the approach. It's
Yes,
like I don't consciously think, well, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. But you're totally right. It's there. And it's an unmet expectation. It's something that I just brought with me that I didn't even really consider, but I know it as soon as she doesn't do it, what it is, right?
absolutely. And sometimes, would more date nights in my marriage help make my marriage better? Well, probably, but what is my motivation for it? If my motivation is that it would make me feel better, then I'm probably going about it wrong, and I'm probably not going to get the results that I'm looking for. If more date nights in my marriage would be better for my spouse, and I'm willing to engage that to serve my spouse's needs, that will make my marriage better. Whatever it is, I mean, cleaning the house or whatever you're fighting about, who's leaving dishes in the sink. Would a clean kitchen sink make my marriage smoother? Possibly, but if I'm going about that in a way that is demeaning to my spouse and fighting with my spouse about it and harping at them and nagging them about it, that's not going to have the result that I'm looking for. I might have a clean sink, but I'll have a very resentful spouse. Yeah. So I think it really boils down to not what are the exact things that you are doing, but it really boils down to what is my motivation for doing these things.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a quick break from the show to share with you 3 things that I think could help you to become more of the man that God meant for you to be: a better husband, a better father, and a better follower of Jesus Christ. 3 things, totally free, that I think can help you. Number 1 is our podcast. Hit the subscribe button, share them with a friend. That makes a big difference, not only in your life, but in somebody else that you care about as well. And it helps us to reach more men. Number 2, we do a free weekly newsletter that is short, it's concise, it deals with just one key question and then 3 simple action items each week that will help you to get in the fight in a really practical way. You can find that at getinthefight.club/newsletter. And then lastly, you can join our Fight Club community. This is a free private app for Christian men only, where you can talk to guys and get involved with guys' lives from all around the world who are just like you, trying to get in the fight to be better men for Christ. You get things like daily devos, weekly challenges, monthly gatherings, small groups, so much more. It's kind of like a Facebook group, but exclusively for Christian men, and it's totally awesome, and it's totally free. getinthefight.club/join and check it out. Get more today. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, get our newsletter, get involved in our Fight Club. Totally free things to help you to get in the fight and win today. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for listening. Back to the show. Yeah, it's a great gut check there, for a guy listening to that. Well, let's kind of build on this too, because you've been married 25 years. Now you've got some experience in this. God's kind of brought you along the way. One thing I know, being married 21 years by next week is,
congrats.
Yeah, thank you, is we're not the same that we were 21 years ago. And so the battle never ends to figure out what the expectations are today, even in a good marriage, right? So how do we get to the point, I guess, is where I'm ultimately leading this for you, is how do we get to the point where we actually continue to figure out what are the expectations or needs of my spouse so we can build a better marriage?
Great question. I guess I need to update my bio. I'm actually starting to push 30 years in marriage at this point.
My bad. Congrats to you.
No, that's okay. Getting close to 30 at least.
Amazing.
But you're right, and thank God that I am not the same person that I was that many years ago. My wife does not deserve to have the same spouse that she had when we first got married, and fairly vice versa. And that's that's part of the beauty of marriage, is that we get to grow together. And we were married at a very young age, and so we have, in many respects, grown up together. And again, that's the beauty of long-term relationship, that we can build something and co-create something together. But that doesn't happen without intention. And so, you could certainly marry each other young or old, But if you don't have an intention of continually learning who this other person is, you're going to over time drift apart, because you'll be looking for this person that used to be there and they will no longer be there.
Exactly.
But I think part of this speaks to the beauty of God. I mean, we talked initially about the beauty of God's natural world and the things that we can see and the things that we can experience in this life. But your spouse is no different than that. Your spouse is also part of that beautiful creation of God. And I think in some respects, it is just simply absolutely arrogant on my part to believe that I could ever come to fully know and understand my spouse.
Mm-hmm.
They are made in the image of God. That in of itself is incomprehensible to me.
Mm-hmm.
If I really want to sit and try to think about that, how could I ever in a lifetime or 1,000 lifetimes come to actually fully know the image of God? And so it is incumbent upon me as a spouse, in this case as a husband, to devote my life to trying to know and understand and live with and glorify the image of God.
Mm.
And if I woke up every morning and rolled over and really took in the fact that I am living next to and covenantly bound with the image of God, and if I look into my spouse's face and I see the image of God, that is a paradigm shift. That is something that will change my attitude. It ought to change my attitude pretty quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and motivate me to continue to explore them, continue to try to serve them, continue to try to get to know them. I mean, this is what Peter talks about in 1 Peter 3 when he talks about living with your wives in an understanding way, right?
Yep.
That is my obligation as a spouse, is to try to understand them. That means two things. One, it means that my wife can be understood. God wouldn't ask me to do something that's impossible. There's this societal myth that women are just this nebulous, unknowable thing, and that's just simply not true. And it means that I have an obligation to do that I must do that, because he says the consequence of that is that if I don't do that, my prayers will not be heard.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty serious. And that means that my relationship with my wife directly impacts my relationship with her father, as it should be. If I had a son-in-law who was mistreating my daughter, I would not have a relationship with him. It would certainly severely impact that relationship.
It would be hindered.
So absolutely. And God feels the same way about his daughter. And it is my obligation to know her, to understand her, and treat her according to who she is. But that means I've got to take the time and the effort and the intentionality to get to know her and to continue to explore her.
Yeah, that's great. Great answer. And I think it really leads into the second part of even that conversation. There's like marriages are unsatisfied because we're maybe not doing that heavy lifting of continually committing to that and seeing her the way God sees her, remembering the vow we made to God that we would cherish and love her. And I told her daddy the same thing, right? We moved so far from that commitment, but it does cross over clearly into our sex lives. If you're unmarried in here, you're not going to be super excited and engaged over here. So talk about why we're unsatisfied and maybe some of the things that you guys walk people through when it comes to a sex life.
The sexual component of the relationship is often just a reflection of how two people are relating to each other in general. It's not like that the problems in your sex life are just in a box with your sex life, and it goes under the bed, and sometimes you pull it out and sometimes it's good or bad. That the problems in your sex life are always related to some deeper issue of connection in your relationship at large. But I think the biggest conflict that people, or at least the most common conflict that people encounter in the sexual relationship, is differences in desire. We, if you're familiar with our podcast and our material, we term this we couch this or frame this as a conversation between one of you is the sexual pursuer in your relationship and one of you is the sexual responder in your relationship. The sexual pursuer is the one who is most motivated by sex. They're the ones who have a greater spontaneous desire for sex. They're the ones to whom sex is a more important, or feels like it's a more important part of their relationship than the other. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter who you marry. You will always marry someone who is on a different part of that scale than you are. You might have married someone who has a greater sexual desire than you. You might have married someone who has a lesser sexual desire than you, but you will never marry someone who has the same sexual desire as you. And, you know, the crazy thing about life is that sometimes that desire is going to flip with each other depending on the season that you're in. Things are going to change up or down with your sexual desire and with your spouse's sexual desire. It's always going to be changing, but navigating that becomes a challenge when we approach sexual desire, once again, when we approach it from how is this going to serve me instead of how is this going to serve my spouse. Mm-hmm. So whether it's a problem with frequency or a problem with I would like to do this in the bedroom and my spouse doesn't want to, or whatever it might be, it always has to come back to what is going to best provide connection in our relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's the conversation that has to start. I mean, we get emails, and when we do live events, we have opportunity for folks to submit anonymous questions. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, you could probably guess this, that probably 3/4 of the questions that we get via email or in those live events starts with, how can I get my spouse to do X, Y, Z?
Right.
And it might be, how do I get my spouse to connect more emotionally with me? How can I get my spouse to have more sex with me or to do this thing in the bedroom? How can I get my spouse to do these things? And the way that we ask these questions tells everything about where our heart is in these questions. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes people just word the questions poorly. I get it. They might have a good heart. They're trying to, but a lot of times it's pretty clear from how the questions are being worded that I want something for myself out of this. And how do I get my spouse to do that? And the short answer is, I can't help you with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't make your spouse do something the same way you can't make your spouse do something. Mm-hmm. That's something that has to be co-created. And so, but that has to start with what is going to best serve my spouse? What is going to best serve the connection for my spouse in our relationship?
Yeah, that's so great. Yeah, it's so great. I wrote a book last year called Let's Talk About Sex. I co-wrote it, and it's 20 things that Christian husbands and wives wish their spouse knew or would do, but don't know how to tell you. And the premise of it is literally the title. Like, quite literally, if we could just get people to talk about the subject together, it would solve so many of these questions. The reason they are saying it to you and I, how do I get them to do this, is because they're not saying it to them. So how do we get couples to talk about sex? Because I don't know how old you are, and you don't have to say. I'm 48. And I know growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was basically don't touch it. Don't talk about it, right? It was very either taboo or purity culture type, just like you'll figure it out when you get there. And what we have found out once we've got there is nobody talks about it. So how do we do that? Like, how do we just even broach, or what's the right word, the conversation as a couple?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm 49. I just turned 49. Hey, so we'll just put that out there if we're being vulnerable with our ages with each other. And I grew up the same way you did, that in this kind of purity culture mindset that don't talk about it, don't think about it, which of course makes you want to talk about it and think about it, but you have no resources to ask the kind of questions. We were under the impression that asking the questions even made you a bad person.
That's right. So thinking about this.
Yeah. Now, was that the intent of purity culture? Probably not. But was that the impact? Absolutely, it was. At least for me. I'll speak for myself.
Yeah, me too.
And of course, you and I both, I'm sure, have met lots of folks who have the same experience. And you're right. Most of these problems can be addressed and at least made better by starting the conversation. most of that is going to has to come from each individual being willing to be vulnerable enough to open up and actually reveal themselves. Mm-hmm. That is really where Intimate Covenant, at least where we first started finding where people had a need and a desire for those kinds of conversations, was we would start our classes with folks, or even our one-on-ones, our mentorship with folks, and just tell them all of the very ugly details about our lives. Just Jen and I spilling our guts and being vulnerable. What we found is that instantly changed the tone in the room, and it gave people the courage to actually be vulnerable, not just with us, which is fine and great. And that is a fun part sometimes of what we do, but it helped them also start to be vulnerable with each other. Like, if I see these people who seem to have their lives together, if they're willing to talk about things that are uncomfortable, then maybe it's okay for me to do that. They were not instantly vaporized and smitten by God because they shared this. So maybe it's okay for me to share this, not just with them, but hopefully with their spouse. Mm-hmm. And when we actually start to reveal ourselves to each other, that's when real growth, and that's where real connectedness comes from in the relationship. It's about being loved for who you actually are.
Yeah.
You know, when you're dating, you're just in love with your spouse's PR department. Mm-hmm. But when you're married, you've got to, if you really want to get to know each other, you've got to actually share who you really are, and take the risk that you can still be loved in spite of who you really are. And so that kind of vulnerability is where this has to start. When you start to reveal that to each other, then you can actually start talking about things that are difficult. Now, there are lots of great tools to start that conversation. You can read a book together. You could listen to a podcast together and have a conversation about it. Sometimes those are, or there's even decks of cards that have questions that you can answer together. Sometimes that is a great way to start that conversation, because then it's not, your spouse doesn't have to question, like, what made you think of that? Are you really that perverted that you thought of that question on your own? Or where did you hear that? It's, Matt and Jenn are the ones with the, dirty minds, quote unquote, who thought of this question, and they feel like we should talk about this. So what do you think about this topic? It's fine. You can make us the bad guys. I'm happy to fill that role, as long as it means that you and your spouse are talking about these things together. And so that's part of what we do with our ministry, with our podcast, is we're trying to build a framework to give people the language and give them the framework to have some of these different conversations, give them terms that they can use to refer to each other. Even just this pursuer and responder concept was a complete mind shift for me and my wife to really understand that. And so that's why we share it with folks. That's why we use that terminology, and it gives other people an opportunity to now have a conversation, to have names for things and problems that they knew that they had, but they didn't know how to talk about because they didn't have even the vocabulary to begin the conversation.
So great. And it's such a huge piece of it. Just the vocabulary. I don't know how to say it. I don't know what words to use. I don't want to come off as a creep, but you've got to start it somehow. And so you're right. Like what you're doing, what I'm doing, the book, and all of that is all intended to get people talking. I don't care how it all comes, right? Use our stuff, use your stuff, get to intimatecovenant.com and find the stuff. But you've got to talk about it. And what you find is, like, when you can talk about that, you can really talk about everything else too. All the other difficult conversations aren't that difficult once you can be like, what do you like in the bedroom, and what do you want more of?
Yeah. And it's all tied together, because what I like in the bedroom has a lot to do with my life experience. It has a lot to do with who I am as a person. It also has a lot to do with how we are relating to each other in every other way, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And the way it is all woven together. It's not something you can just ignore. And as you improve your ability, like as you said, as you improve your ability to talk about those kinds of things, you are going to naturally have to deal with all of the other places of conflict in your relationship.
That's right.
And you have the connection then to be able to do that effectively.
So great. Yeah. There's, and I don't mean this to be promoting my stuff today. What I want to say though is, like, there's a second book that I wrote for parents, because what I think we need to engagement in now is not only like, is you solving this and dealing with this in your own marriage but you also as a dad, because again, part of our mission here is better husbands, better fathers, better followers of Christ. We grew up, you and I both grew up where we're saying we didn't receive that as kids, and we've now carried it into our marriage. And this is why I mention it. So Let's Talk About Sex is a book for couples, but there's a second one that's called Let's Talk About Sex, and it's questions teenagers have but don't know how to ask you. And I think it's an important thing to say, because when I look at my own brokenness and what I brought into it and what I hear in your story, and you come like, we can help the next generation, starting with our own kids and grandkids, to do better and to start better. So maybe just what are some of the things you might say to that dad to lead them in their home, and how do they have this conversation with their kids as well?
That's a great point. And it never fails wherever we go, whenever we talk about these topics, especially the sexual topics in a marriage, inevitably we get questions about how can we pass this on to our kids. The first step has to be, you've got to learn how to talk about this with your spouse first.
Exactly.
You will never be able to have a coherent conversation with your children if you can't talk about it with the one that you're actually sharing this relationship with. And what I tell folks is the best way to teach your kids about sex is, number one, have a great sex life. Mm-hmm. And your kids ought to know that you have a great sex life. Mm-hmm. Now, they don't have to know the when and the where and the details.
Yeah, nobody needs that.
No, for sure. No, they don't want that either. But they should know that their parents have a great sex life.
Yeah, agreed.
Because what I want most for my kids is for them to have the same great quality of relationship and sexual intimacy that I have with my spouse. I want them to go and find that on their own. Number one, I want them out of my house eventually. But number two, I want them to find that. I want them to know the joy that God has, of the blessing that God has given us in marriage and that relationship. So I want to model that so that they see that there is something worth going and getting. The world tells them that marriage is the place where sex goes to die. The world tells them that the more different people I have sex with, the better my sex life will be. And that is just patently not true. Mm-hmm. But how will they know that if they don't see that that is true in my life? I should be the greatest advocate for married sex that my kids have ever known and see. So they should know I love their mom, I love her, and I pursue her, and we have a better sex life than what they will find if they go off of God's path. So it has to start with me. It has to start with me pursuing that and building that and co-creating that with my spouse. The other misconception, and there's a lot of pieces to this, but I think the other biggest misconception is that the way that my kids are going to learn about sex is with one single awkward conversation.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And that just simply is not the case.
Yes.
This conversation has to start from the time that they know who they are and that we are having conversations. It starts with giving them a vocabulary about all of their body parts. It starts with having shame-free conversations about, what they look like and who they are and what parts they have and what parts their siblings have and what parts their mom and dad have, and giving them, starting with a shame-free view of themselves. Mm-hmm. And then continually engaging conversation about the sexual influences that are already in the world. Mm-hmm. Instead of just, if you're watching TV, instead of turning it off immediately when inappropriate sex shows up on TV, turning it off and just walking away, how about turning it off and having a conversation about why that's not part of God's plan and what is the alternative? Not great. Just no, but it's no, and here's why, because God has a plan that is so much more beautiful and so much better. And how about teaching them about the beauty of what God's plan is so that they have something to actually look forward to? If all we say is no, we give them no alternative, they're going to find some alternative. And it's not going to be what we want. Because unfortunately, at least in the way that you and I grew up, Satan is talking more about this than the church is. And we've just given it over to Satan. We've given over the microphone to Satan to tell everyone what sex is all about. And we must do better. We must be speaking louder into our kids' lives about what the beautiful plan for sex is in their lives.
So well said. It's a connected piece here. We're talking marriage and parenting. Again, I think a lot of grandparents are going to have to fill in the gaps here, right? If their kids aren't walking with the Lord. And, I know a lot of guys that come into our ministry that's just like, man, I didn't do a good job. I came to faith late, whatever it is.
Sure.
Grandparents are going to have to fill in the gaps, right? We've got to figure out ways. And again, resources that you offer, books like what we offer, there's chances for guys, but it does start in his home. And then it takes real courage and manhood to start leading the next generation better than we were handed it. We did a thing, by the way. I did a pornography recovery group with church. We had like 30 men there. And there was there's such a huge range. There's guys from 80 to 20 in this conversation.
Love it.
And I said, we just kind of were sitting in a circle going around. And I said, how many of you had like a good conversation, even just once with your parents growing up about sex? Not a hand.
Crickets, right? Yeah.
Not one hand, right? And it wasn't just like my generation and your generation. This was all the generations. And so, again, just pleading with guys listening to this today, we've got to do a better job at getting past whatever awkwardness or weirdness you feel. It benefits you. It's a kingdom issue to have better, stronger marriages. Everybody's like, well, the family's falling apart. Well, let's fix it. And again, like my particular ministry is like, listen, men, we need you to do this. It benefits you, but we need you in this fight to do this. So
absolutely,
again, love what you guys are doing. To bring it together as Christian couples, I think is super ideal. For me in particular, it's really just like, let's get the men engaged in this as best we can.
And I would admonish, some of your listeners need to start by focusing, getting their own homes in order and getting these conversations started in their own homes. I would imagine some of your listeners have their homes in order, and I would admonish you, broaden the walls of your home. And if you've got your own home in order, find other people who need this and mentor them, whether they're young people, married people, whatever it is. Take an active role in making sure that God's message for marriage and God's message for sexuality is being proclaimed. We've got to do better.
Love it. That's a great word there. Is there anything else as we wrap up here for time's sake? I think we could just keep chatting for a long time, Matt.
You're right.
I'm going to have you back for sure if you'll be willing at some point. But is there anything else that we didn't cover here in the next 2 or 3 minutes that you would want to say for men about marriage or sex that we didn't?
Well, I think first, Nate, this has been a great conversation. I just love the fact that we found each other. I don't even know how you found me, but I'm grateful and grateful to be able to have this conversation. It's just so encouraging and invigorating and just life-giving to me to have this kind of conversation with someone who believes the same way, who is motivated for the same kinds of things in God's kingdom. So thank you for this opportunity. I think I just want to get on your bandwagon and encourage men to get in the fight. Being good enough is just not good enough. And I settled for that for too long. I settled for good enough because my family looked good enough. We went to church, we dressed up and we sat on the pew and we did our duty and we looked like we had it all together, but really we didn't. That just ultimately was not fulfilling for me. I hope that if that is your life, I hope that you get struck with something that wakes you up to realize that just isn't going to get it done. And I want you to know that there is something that's just far, far greater, far more fulfilling than getting the next promotion, far more fulfilling than getting recognized in your community for whatever civic accomplishments that you might have. That leading your family to something that is truly impactful in the kingdom will have eternal consequences. It will make a generational difference if you can put your family on a track to be servants and really making a difference in the kingdom. That will make the biggest difference. That is your legacy.
So good. So well said. And yeah, everything you're describing about good enough and all of that is what I think of when I think we're fighting passivity. Porn and passivity are just scourges. And I don't point any fingers. I'm a recovering passive, weak man.
That's right. Me too.
Stay in the fight. So, but when you're describing it, there's so many. There's so many. We're like, well, maybe porn's not your thing. But man, if you're just coasting and drifting, right? Like this is the issue, and it's affecting your family. It's affecting all of these things. So, Matt, I mean, to echo what you said, like I'm so grateful for what you guys are doing. So grateful to meet. I hope that we get to stay connected for a long time. I want men to be able to find you. How do they find you? Like, where do married couples go? Where can they get connected with you?
You can find more about us at intimatecovenant.com. Of course, our podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. The Intimate Covenant podcast. Would love to get in touch with you. We also host an annual marriage retreat. If that's something that you are interested in, we do that every year in the Woodlands, Texas, just north of Houston. Love to have you join us. There's more information about that at the website. Come join us. It's a great time, great weekend. We'd love to see you there.
That's awesome, man. We're definitely going to put that in the show notes, promote that, share it on social media. Want people to find you, get connected to you. Love what you and Jenn are doing. Thank you for your time and being with us, and let's do it again.
Hope so. I would relish that opportunity to talk to you again, Nate. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Hey guys, listen, if you're listening as you're driving, do me a favor. Actually, maybe if you're driving, don't do this, but at some point hit subscribe. Click the like button, hit the notification thing so that you can know every Monday a new show comes out. Get in the fight. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you listen to your shows. But again, if this was one that it's worthy enough, I guess, of sharing, would you do us a favor? Just share that so other men can find that. That really helps us a lot. Share it on social media, or maybe it's just one where you're just like, man, I really want my friend to hear this, or my brother, or whatever it is. Like, share this conversation directly with them. We're here to help men be better husbands, better fathers, better followers of Christ. That's the mission. So now it's your turn to go get in the fight for your marriage, for your sex life, and we'll see you in the next show. Thanks for listening today. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here today and listening to the show. Please be sure to head over to the website at getinthefight.club. And before you go, if you haven't already, please subscribe, click the like button, and leave us a positive 5-star review. It makes a huge difference whenever you do. Have a great day. Go get in the fight.